Okay, so I just got back from the Olivier Busquet JC Alvarado fight. A lot of people were asking my opinions and my thoughts on the fight, and wow, that was so much more emotional than I was expecting, and so much wilder than I was expecting. I mean, the fight result. I guess the thing that most people have asked me was like, "Oh, am I surprised at how it happened or whatever?" And I'm like, I knew a lot going into the fight. I interviewed both guys for the documentary that we're doing, and I still didn't really feel confident either way that either guy was going to win. Um, but one thing that did come up sort of in our interviews was that Olivier had said we're gonna kind of feel him out on the feet. If I feel comfortable on the feet, then we'll keep it there. But otherwise, I can put him into the fence, I can take him down, and I can get on top and wear him out. And those of you who saw the fight know that's exactly how it went down. Um, So I still didn't have a really confident pick going into the fight, but I was able to get into both locker rooms. Just having access to both locker rooms, so that was really awesome. And then when I saw both guys warming up, I was really actually thinking that JC had an advantage, very much a very strong advantage on the feet. He looked very fluid in the locker room, like putting together like combinations, just much faster with his hands, much quicker, much technically sharper uh, compared to Olivier, and that really surprised me that there was a big gulf there. So I went out and I told we went into like a corner where nobody can hear me. And I sort of recorded my thoughts and said, "Wow, like Olivier will need to get this to the ground because he's probably going to be outmatched on the feet." Um, it turns out in the fight that didn't happen at all because JC, from a technical perspective, made a couple mistakes, and um, the main mistake I saw that my eyes saw is I thought that he was throwing way too many kicks without throwing punches first, and he was throwing them with his hands down, obviously, and getting countered by Olivier's right hand over and over. Um, and that was a really big mistake. So JC has good kicks. He's very athletic and he can actually do a lot of stuff with his kicks. Former soccer player, and all that kind of stuff. But he's not at the martial arts level where he can be like a lot of these guys and keep his hands down and not set up his kicks and just rely on like pure footwork and speed. And so I think he over relied on that. I think if he plays a more fundamentals based boxing, kickboxing, Dutch style kickboxing, I think he does like a lot better if he just sort of is a little more traditional, throws 1 2 1 2 kick 1 2 3, four punches and then a kick. I think he ends up doing a lot better on the feet. And what happened was when he would wind up to throw a kick and Olivier would see that very quickly and just counter. And his counters, Olivier's counters weren't the prettiest, but he is, as the much bigger guy, you have to be, if you're JC, you have to be much more careful about that kind of stuff. So that's how I think JC got knocked down in the first round, and then he got hurt. He also said in the back that he had some trouble dealing with the reach, which makes a lot of sense. It's that's one of the harder things about fighting somebody bigger than you is actually the reach more than the power sometimes. But the power mattered. A lot of people asked me what I thought. Like, did the heel hook in the first round look dangerous? I think he Olivier got it out past the knee. So basically, when you're in a heel hook, if the guy's locked over, uh, so if you're the one who's being trapped in the heel hook, if you're in Olivier's position and you manage to clear the knee line, you manage to get the lock below the knee, you're going to be safe like 9 times out of 10. And he managed to do a good job of that. Olivier could have sucked it back in. You could just re-snatch the legs and do that, but I think he wasn't just able to do it. There's strength, and there's even a little sweat at that point, so it's a little slippery. So I think it was one of those things where I don't think he was super close on the heel hook, but if he had a little more experience in that position and a little more strength, he probably would have been able to finish it. He threw up some triangles and stuff too, but I don't think there was ever any like real danger there. Um, that's sort of how I feel about technically the fight. I felt like uh, in the first round that when JC got knocked down and when the fight ended up on the ground, that he was mostly trying to stall to hopefully get a referee stand up for a while, and then that didn't really work. The second round, I thought Olivier came out looking really, really tired. And so even though JC lost the first round quite solidly, I thought there was a good chance it was going to turn in favor. So it was like Olivier was there sort of, with his hands very, very tense, like sort of like this. And he's plodding a little, like it's not like loose and fluid, and like the way, you want to be loose in the shoulders and the hands and the arms. Olivier looked like all the blood was, he kind of like, he looked like how people look like after they bench press to failure, they just do like 5 sets of bench press. Like his arms looked very stiff. And he wasn't being super active, but JC also wasn't being very active at all. JC danced around, his footwork looked good. He danced around, but he never did anything. He never, used a jab. And then, I think he went for like a spinning back kick at some point, and Olivier got like his back standing and then put him down on the mat. And then, again, just buried him, like big elbows, big ground and pound for a lot of it. Lots of really good guard passing. Really good guard passing on Olivier's part. Really minding his P's and Q's inside the guard. Just never leaving an arm out, never reaching. Mostly punching short punches, never winding up and throwing big punches and letting JC maybe catch a triangle or something like that, or so he can get back to his feet. JC in the first and the second round was probably maybe playing a little bit too much for submissions, where maybe he would have been better off scrambling to get back to his feet. And then by the late second and third rounds, he just physically, I think his body wouldn't respond to his attempts to stand up, because I could see him attempting to stand up, attempting to escape, and he just couldn't. Just being under the bigger guy wore him down too much. But Olivier was super tired, which is the thing. Like you could see it. Like Olivier would punch, and then rest. And he got a few warnings from the referee, but he was really intelligent. So basically, like he would be on top of Olivier. And then kind of neither guy would be doing anything. Ref would get the warning, and Olivier just finds just enough energy to like get up, posture, throw a few strikes, make an attempt at passing, maybe pass, maybe not, and then go back to taking a break. And then the next warning, he'd make sure. So Olivier fights, on the ground very, very, very cerebrally, very impressed with that stuff. And then, so 2 rounds down, now because of the rules of the fight, JC has to win the last 2 to keep it going, because that was the stipulation, is that they would only go to 5th if it was tied after 4. So third round begins. JC's still looking pretty fresh, lots of footwork, lots of moving, but not pulling the trigger, not really doing anything, not pressing the action, not being nearly as desperate as he needed to be. And Olivier does something really smart. I don't know if this was corner or just him in the moment. He shoots a double. And it's, it just blows right through JC. There's not even like any kind of semblance of takedown defense. You just like blew right through him. It's not like one of these things where JC like started to sprawl and get his hips back, but Liv just too big and too strong, or he turned the corner and something like that. No, he just straight football tackled him through, and that was it. And there's just a lot of accumulated damage there. Tough to see. Since making this documentary and all that, I've tried really, really hard to be super objective. But I've known JC for longer, and I'm probably, closer to them. I've grown to like JC, I've grown to like Olivier a lot too, just through interviewing and talking about him. I mean, I think he's a guy who really has his head on straight and a good attitude about things. Very, very humble in victory. He seems to be in a good place mentally right now. So I really grew to like him as well. But JC's a guy who, I've done a little training with him before. We talk, we chat online about stuff. We hang out, and it was tough to try to be impartial and see the beating that he was taking and how he physically looked after was a tough thing. And I say that as somebody who's been around the sport a while, and I've seen teammates lose, and I've watched a ton of fights, and I've seen sort of the agony of defeat. But this one hit me in a really different way, which is ironic, because this is probably like the one fight where I tried to be the most neutral. but to see somebody like that, that was a really really rough spot. And Olivier was really classy in victory. I did an interview with him in his locker room after, and and this stuff will all come out, but I'll tease some of it here. That I asked him basically whether he would continue fighting, and he said he doesn't know yet, and that's been sort of a theme that I've talked about with both guys all the way through the interviews that we did in the past. And he said I don't really know yet. I'll say that one part I really didn't enjoy was hurting him, and he knew he was hurting him, and he knew he had to do it to finish the fight, but he wasn't real thrilled about doing that. So I mean, some people would look at it and sort of say, well, if you're a fighter, you don't care, you can cause damage, and yeah, I've never really felt that way. I mean, I feel like, he said something in the back like, I feel bad for him, and his coach says, no, you don't feel bad for him, you don't feel bad. I'm like, well, he's like, well, no, I can, right? I won, and I said, yeah, like I think you can simultaneously feel bad for JC while still being proud of your own accomplishment and still being happy for yourself. So that's sort of my post-fight reaction to this. Obviously, like, I hope, I know that JC went to the hospital afterwards. I hope he's doing well and all the scans show up negative, and just that the only sort of damage is a few bruises and he's a little bit lighter in the pocketbook. So that's that. That's sort of my impression of how the fights went. Hope you are still interested in checking out the documentary. If you don't know about it, I'm going to throw up a link where you can contribute or at least spread the word about it. We're really excited. We got really, really good pre, post, during quality audio. Like, it's a really good production. We're really, really excited to make it. So whatever you can do to help us make that a reality, that would be super awesome for us. This was a hell of a fight. I mean, it was a fairly one-sided fight, but it wasn't what I expected. I think a lot of people would have expected a first-round finish. Like, one guy just turns out to be way better than the other and finishes in the first. That's kind of what I thought was going to happen. And I'm very not happy that JC took the beating that he did. But the fact that it was sort of like a war, and it really tested both guys. I mean, I interviewed Olivier like 25 minutes after the fight, and he was still really exhausted. Like, he'd taken a shower already, but he was already starting to like sweat again. That both guys went through all that makes hopefully the documentary even kind of more compelling in some ways. I'm going to keep doing follow-up interviews. I might ask Olivier like a few days from now how he's doing, and hopefully I can talk to JC as well. That'll be a tougher conversation, but hopefully he won't be the emotional moments. But we captured some really, really great audio and interviews with all the people that are around: teammates, coaches, training partners, people who bet on the fight, random MMA people who showed up, gyms. There's lots of really good stuff, really quality audio in there, and I think you guys will like it. So check out the link, and thank you so much for watching this. See ya.